What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Podcast. We are joined today by a special guest, someone who knows quite a bit of the Mindset Podcast, an alum who we had about 2 years ago. And it's funny because, Gabe, when I called you, Gabriel Cardona, I'm going to get confused here with a Gabe. So I'm going to go Gabriel and Gabe, my co-host. But Gabriel, when I called you to get you on the podcast like a week ago or some couple days ago, we talked about how different all three of our lives have changed in just 2 years. Like when we had you on before, it was with Chris Tapanes and it was talking about FIU Sales Society. And, we were all three of us at a different point in our life. I wasn't in Gainesville yet. Didn't even know I was coming here. I mean, so many different things. And here we are just 2 years, just 2 years later. And I mean, you're an Ironman guy. Gabe is engaged. I'm about to graduate in 4 days. It's crazy. It's wild. We're going to catch up now in a little bit. We have a lot of exciting and fun questions for you, Gabe, but welcome to the podcast again for the second time.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I love to be back here. And like you said, life moves by pretty fast. So
yeah,
it's good that we're all on the same page. And it's just the type of individuals that we are, right? We're always looking for more, always challenging ourselves. So it's proof of our hard work and dedication of where we are now.
Yeah, man, that's exactly right. And let's jump right into it. So starting with our 2 warm-up questions. The first one is, what is the weirdest thought you have had while in a triathlon or Ironman race or any kind of race that you've had? What's the weirdest thing that you've ever thought about?
So this was pretty funny. So it was my first Ironman, and imagine you're on a bike for 5, 6, 7 hours after you just swam 2.5 miles, and I was beat up, man. I was real tired. I was on that bike. I think I was on hour 5. I was like on mile 80. And I got so close to quitting that I just wanted to just throw myself off the bike. Like I was so close from just throwing myself off the bike and saying, you know what, like that's it, I'm done. I think that's the craziest thing from what I thought. And but obviously kept fighting through, and the mental battle, obviously, after doing the bike and going straight into running. But to answer your question, man, it was literally like a self-sabotaging thing came into my mind of just throwing myself on the bike.
That's pretty crazy. We were just talking off the mic now. For those who are listening and may have not caught on yet, Gabe, you're a 2-time Ironman, and we'll get into that now in a second. And I've done some running myself, not quite to the level of what you've done, Gabe, but I've had some deep thoughts as well in my running. And we were just talking about how like running in Miami might be so different from running in other places in the US, just because of the different in climate, the different weather, the different hills, the elevation. And I remember my first half marathon I did on Hollywood. We were just talking in Hollywood, Florida, on the boardwalk, and I was on like mile 9 or 10 or something, and I don't know if I was like hallucinating at this point, because like to my right, it was just like the beach and like the ocean and everything, which was actually there. I wasn't hallucinating that part. That was real.
Yeah.
But what I thought I was seeing was like one of these like ice cream little like trucks, and like the little music playing in your head, like from where we were kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds so good right now. Like if I could just like take a little detour, grab a little, strawberry shortcake ice cream and just lick it on the way to the finish line.
Yeah.
And I'll be good. Right. But my buddy kind of nudges me. He's like, dude, what are you looking at? And I'm like, sure enough, I look back and it's gone. It's not even there. I'm like, wow. Like I was that tired and that exhausted that I was looking and craving ice cream during that race. So bet your ass after that race, my fiance and I, we went to get some food and we got some ice cream after that, man, because I couldn't stop thinking about that. But I can't even imagine the types of thoughts that you might have gone through. So that's pretty crazy. Our next question, which is kind of an interesting segue here, and you're a big fan of David Goggins.
Yes.
And you've talked a lot about him and read his books and listen to his podcasts and stuff. If you could ask David Goggins any question, what would you ask?
That's a great question, man. That's a great question. And like you said, David Goggins for me has been the huge motivation. I mean, I would even say is the reason why I started doing all this endurance training, from reading both his books, watching all his podcasts that he's done. He's just been a huge admiration of what the human body can do, from going from nothing to something, to the mental battle you do every single day. And a question I would ask him would be, what would happen if he injured himself to the point where he can't do any more mental endurance runs, right? Like, what would he do? What would he spend his time in still trying to challenge himself? Because he's an individual that's consistently challenging himself. So I think that would be my question, to see, what's next after if you severely injure yourself? Because I feel like sometimes, a lot of times we're doing this fitness and we're running and doing everything, and even at our age as well, we feel unstoppable. We feel like superheroes, that nothing can hurt us, but that's really not true. You have to be careful. So I think that's what I would ask him.
And I think he got really close to it, right, Gabe? If I remember correctly, he peed blood at one point. He was like spazzing out, like after like running 100 miles, I think, in like a day, if I'm not mistaken, right? You can correct me because you know more about him. But I mean, he was up into that point of like, physically he couldn't anymore, but he found it inside of him to keep going. Is that right?
That's right, man. That's right. Yeah, he even on some races he fractured toes, his tibias. Yeah. He had like kidney failure. He was still going. He had pulmonary issues on some races, and he would come back and finish it. I mean, he's the definition of a hardcore man.
That's crazy, man. Do you know where is he out in California? Do you know where he lives?
I think he lives in Las Vegas, Nevada, if I'm not wrong. I think that's where his home base is, because a lot of his videos it's very like desert-like, and it's very
desert,
hot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that, and because he loves heat training, which is something I love doing too. It really takes you to the next level of the mental aspect of how you're running. So I think that's why he lives there too, because he's able to run in such heat, where it's like 90, 100, easily over 100 degrees.
Yeah.
In Vegas.
Gabriel, have you ever experienced any kind of pain like that, like extraordinary pain, either during or after a race?
Oh man, yeah. So I'll tell you this. Apart from the 2 Ironmans that I did, I also did 2 ultra marathons, right? So the first ultra marathon was, I'll tell you the story on that one. So I signed up for an ultra marathon, a 50 miler, right? It was in Daytona. It's called the Daytona 100. I signed up for the 50 miler, and this was the first time that I ever ran more than 20 miles. Before that, I had only ran maybe 20 miles at once, and I just had a feeling that, I can do this ultra 50 mile. So I signed up for it, and I was driving up to Daytona, and something got into me on the way up to picking up my race packet. Something got into me, and it was like, you can finish the 50 mile. Like, you truly believe yourself, and you can do it. So why not sign up for the 100 miler? That was happening at the same race, at the same start date. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. So I went ahead and I changed my application. On the way there, called them, said, hey, you know what? I'm not doing the 50 mile anymore. I'm going to do the 100 mile. So completely had to change all of my approach to the race, all my nutrition. And so race day comes, and I've never ran 100 miles before, and I have never ran 50 miles before either. So the problem that I had was pacing myself. So when I ran the 50, I got to mile 56. And at mile 56, man, I fully broke down. I remember being on the phone with my family, with my girlfriend, just calling them, telling them that I just can't keep going on anymore. I mean, I hit a mental roadblock. And the problem was that I had started too fast, and I essentially blew out my quads and my calves, right? My tendons were destroyed. I was limping for about 1.5 miles at mile 56. And I started the race at like 7 a.m. and this was at like 9 p.m. So imagine from 7 to 9, I was 14 hours running. And I was limping, and I had to call it quits. That was the lowest time and I'm not someone who quits. I hate quitting. I'm always saying the quote, either you PR or you ER. Right? Like it's either you finish or you're dragging me out of this race. And so that was a really brutal time for me mentally, because I had to quit. And after that, man, I was basically almost needed crutches. I was limping. I needed help walking for about 2-3 days, and I didn't feel right for 4 or 5 days. Like something in me was wrong. And then after a while, I just got myself back together. And then that's when less than a month after that race, I signed up for a 100K ultra marathon for redemption because I knew that I needed to redeem myself. And so I went to this 100K and I ended up completing the race. I ran 63 miles in 15 hours, surpassing my previous time, surpassing the previous mileage. So that was a huge win for me in determination and just wanting to go back out there, knowing that I could have, but I didn't, and continue to train. So that was a huge, and even after all these races, I'm limping. I don't feel well for like 3 days. You can train as much as you can, but on these race days, you're giving it all you can, right?
Yeah, dude. I think I was just talking to Anthony before this, and we've spoken off the mic as well. Like, okay, like Gabe, like, what does your diet look like? What kind of training are you doing? And I think a big theme of what we're talking about now is obviously physical ambition and physical feats, but I think so much of this can also be applied to mental things and people that, things that people go on, in a day to day. And I want to ask you before we move on, because I really want to take a step back. But before we do that, what kind of like preparation, goes into these types of marathons, ultra marathons, Ironmans? Because, I feel like a lot of people might be listening to this or even looking on stuff on YouTube or David Goggins, whatever, like, oh, like, I'm an athlete. I've been, running all my life, or I've been playing basketball or football all my life. Like, I can do this. Like, this is within my capacity. Yeah. But people don't, at least for me, I was ignorant in the beginning, and I didn't know like the type of nutrition that you needed to take with you on these type of runs, or like the type of food that you need to be eating before that. Like, talk on the importance of the preparation before, because obviously the performance is important, but I feel like the preparation beforehand is just as, if not more, important to some of these things.
Yeah, a huge portion of it. So what I would say, the two number one things is consistency, especially when it comes to endurance type of training. Endurance is very unforgiving because you can train for a month straight, running every day, feel fantastic, but then you don't run for 2 or 3 days, and it feels like you lost so much progress. But consistency when it comes to training, even if you work out 30 minutes a day, that was a huge thing for me. I needed to get into the gym and do some sort of endurance training every single day, and that kept me mentally sharp. But like you said, the nutrition part, that I took that part very, very seriously, and that's what helped me helped me accomplish everything I've done because of the nutrition. So I'll give you some examples. I broke it down by, my own research, because I don't have a coach. Everything I've done has been trial and error, Google, and one of the reasons why I don't like a coach is because sometimes a coach will give you limitations as far as what you can do. And that's just my preference. That's just my view, right? Like, a coach will tell you, hey, run 10 miles today. But if I run 10 miles and I feel good, I'm going to go for 20. I'm going to go for 30, right? And that's just the way how I work. But when it comes to nutrition, I broke it down to really scientifically. So I would have 60 to 90 grams of carbs every hour, and then 400 through 600 milligrams of electrolytes. And so that was the amount I needed every hour to keep my body functioning, to keep going on those endurance races. So for my ultra races, I would literally have Snicker bars. I had electrolyte pills that I would take. I love the Uncrustables, because to the outside it might seem like, oh, it's just snacks and it's junk food. But in reality, when you look at those type of snacks, they had everything I needed, right? They were calorie dense, the chocolate, the peanut butter, everything fueled me correctly. The sugars was just right. The sodium was just right in those snacks. So it helped me. I think on the ultra where I ran 62 miles, think about it. I ran for 15 hours. So I had 1 Snicker bar and 1 Uncrustables every hour. So I had 15, and I would wear it in my backpack that I had, my backpack that I would wear for the run, and I had 15 Snickers, 15 Uncrustables, and I went through like 30, 40 pills of electrolyte pills. But it was all very calculated by an hour, and I knew how much to take, when to take, how much water to take. And that's what really changes the game in those endurance runs.
So what you're telling us is that you're a machine. You are a robot that is not human. That's what I'm hearing. That pretty much sums it up. That's crazy, man. Now let me ask you this.
That lives off Snicker bars.
And lives off Snicker bars, which is wild. I would have never expected that. But let me ask you this, Gabe. this being the mindset podcast, and a lot of what we talk about being about around the power of the brain. And now that we're talking about preparation, I want to stick to this. Which aspect is difficult to prepare for in a competition, the physical part of it or the mental part of it? Because you just touched a little bit on the physical aspect of it, the nutrition, what you would take. In your opinion, what's harder to prepare for, the physical part or the mental, or both?
When it comes to the endurance part of training, I would say the mental aspect was the most difficult.
Right.
Because even in your training sessions, you're running either indoors or outdoors for over an hour to 2 hours, right? And music gets very old quickly. So you're stuck in your mind for an hour or two in your training days every day. Even on the bike rides, right? When you're biking outside or inside, I would bike on my regular training days. I'd bike an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then on the weekends, obviously when I didn't work, I would go out for like a 3-hour bike, 4-hour bike ride. And the mental aspect was the hardest part. And in the Ironman races, you're not allowed to have music. You're not allowed to have earphones.
Wow.
So the entire time you're in your thoughts, you're in your mind. So knowing that this is like the mindset podcast, they say that the endurance, if you do an endurance event, it's like having 10,000 hours of therapy. Because when I'm on that bike or I'm on that run, man, I'm thinking, I go to the darkest places you guys could probably think about, right? Like in your own personal, on what you could have been, on what you can do better. And on those bikes and runs and swims where you're just by yourself for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on mile 80 or mile 30, 60, you're thinking, and me personally, I'm thinking about, how can I be a better son? How can I be a better partner to my girlfriend? How can I be better at my job? How can I improve myself in these aspects? So if you're not really true to yourself and you're not facing those head on, then that's where people quit, right? People quit when things get too hard, when they start facing reality. So that's one of the things I really loved about the endurance part, is because you're facing all these dark parts of yourself that you have to face. And at the end of the tunnel, right, you see light and you become a better person. And I feel like every time I do these endurance races, at the end of it, I come out with some type of new revelation, something that I can apply to my life. It's not just about the running. It's not just about, oh, this is hard, I'm going to do it. I really get something out of it after each race and even during the training.
Yeah, I think I'm a huge fan of, like, I'm sure like Nick Bare and obviously David Goggins and all these guys, and like Dan Churchill.
Yeah.
Shout out, he's been on the podcast before. Like all these guys, like they talk on obviously like the physical aspect, but the mental is really what builds the character and like what builds what you're gonna do after the race, right? And like some of these guys have built some of the most successful businesses. They've written all the books. They've had all the podcasts. Like they have so much wisdom, and you're like, where do you guys get? Like you just run for 20 hours, and like you go to some of the darkest places when you are running on these ultra marathons and these marathons. And I can only imagine, some of the thoughts that people go through and like some of the things that they overcome, right? Because like again, like you said, like it's like you're almost going through your own therapy because you have so much time to really go through it and think things out. But like I said, Gail, I want to go back. Anthony mentioned it. You were on probably 2 years ago, if not a little bit over 2 years ago now, on the Mindset podcast with our good friend Chris. I don't even know if at that point you would have thought you would have been here doing ultra marathons and being an Ironman, a 2-time Ironman. But I want to go back to the beginning, to the inception. What was the thing that you were like, did you see something and be like, dude, like that's so cool, I think I can do that? Or like, was it something just to get fit and you fell in love with it? Like, take us back to that moment that you're like, I think I can do this. And then from then on, like what happened for you to just stay consistent and stay motivated?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, and like you said, to your point of Nick Bare and all these guys, I mean, they do the endurance part. A lot of their thinking comes in those times of solitude. And so that's why I love it. And for me, going to the gym every day and training, I love it because it's a time for me to reflect. Some people will sit down and journal. For me, it's during those times where I can reflect on what I need to do, how can I be better. Every day, every hour, I know that the weight is going to be the same weight, the training is going to be the same, and I just have to be there and get better each day. And so taking you guys back to the beginning, I actually only started this 1 year ago. So in 1 year, I did 4 Olympic triathlons, 2 ultra marathons, and 2 Ironmans in 1 year. And so what happened was I was your typical bro split weightlifting guy, right? I hated cardio. I've always hated cardio since high school. I never thought of myself of running. And one day, I don't know, something got into me and I just ran 2 miles on a treadmill. And I was like, hey, you know, I felt pretty good. I'm just going to sign up for a half marathon. And so the half marathon a week later came, and I did pretty well and I enjoyed the mental aspect of it. But I started craving the discipline part of it, right? The training every day, that mental battle that I went through on that first half marathon, I started loving it. And I knew that I wanted to put that into my life, because once you do something really hard, the rest of your day feels very easy. And that's exactly what doing these hard endurance training races does to you as well. It prepares you for hard moments in life. And so from there, I signed up for a triathlon. And the reason I even signed up for a triathlon is because I love the running part. But then I started thinking to myself, well, if I'm running all the time, I'm probably going to get injured, right? It's like that. So I was like, what can I do apart from running? I was like, well, I can bike. And then I was like, well, what else can I do from biking? I was like, well, I can swim. It's like, oh shit, there's triathlons. So then I signed up for a triathlon. And out of surprise, I bought my first bike and I did amazing. And I ended up coming first place in my age group in the, So then that's when I knew, well, wow, I have this pretty good talent at it. I signed up for another triathlon and ended up coming second place. And so from the triathlons, I started noticing that my favorite discipline from those 3 was running, because it was the hardest one, in my opinion. It was the one where you would go into that mental battle the hardest. And so I started focusing a lot on running, and that's when I signed up for my first ultra, the one that I had to stop at 56. From there, I did one more triathlon, Olympic triathlon. And so for those listening, an Olympic triathlon is a 900-meter swim, a 25-mile bike ride, and a 6-mile run. So after completing 3 of those, I was like, okay, what's next, right? I want to challenge myself. That was hard. I want to keep going. And what was after that was the Ironman. So the Ironman is a 2.4-mile swim, a 112-mile bike ride, and a full marathon. So I signed up for the Florida Panama City Ironman, and that was absolutely brutal. I trained for it at least an hour and a half every day, to 2 to 3 hour sessions on Saturday and Sunday, where I had the most time. After that, I did another ultra marathon, which was a 62-mile ultra. And then after that, I did the second Ironman in Texas. So, and then now we're here 1 year later, completing all that. And I know you asked, you know, what keeps me motivated, and it's that mental aspect, right? Where you just go into these dark places each time, and you get something out of it each time, each race. Find something new that you can improve in your own life. And I love that aspect, and it keeps me very disciplined, not only in, you know, working out and trying to get into the next Ironman or the next race, but it keeps me disciplined in my life, right? I'm able to manage work a lot easier, manage my time with my personal, with girlfriend, with family, right? Like, I can set things up a lot easier because I have my day planned out. I know I need to train, so I need to have this, and this planned out. So it's not only helped me physically and my fitness journey, but personally, it's been a complete game changer for me.
Is it fair to say that you have learned not only to embrace, but take it a step further? Is it fair to say that you've learned to love pain? Because hearing you, it almost sounds like you can't just decide today you're never going to run again in your life. Like, it's almost become a part of you. And you just shared now for, you know, the last 10 minutes or so that it's hard. It's painful. You get in your own head. There's a lot of physical, mental, emotional pain when it goes to not only preparing for months, but the actual day of. It's painful. Like, none of it feels good at the moment, maybe afterwards. So would it be fair to say that you seek and almost love this kind of pain?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And for me, I just get a real kick out of getting to that really low point and just being like, I'm not going to quit today. Like, this is, I'm not finishing it here. Like, for me, that I get the biggest enjoyment. That's what I enjoy. And then the feeling you get after you finish something that's just extremely hard is you can't compare that to anything else.
Yeah.
And it's funny you said that it's still hard for me, because it is. Like, a lot of times when I talk to certain people, they're like, oh, like with you, Gabe, you were like, oh, I did a half marathon, but for you it might be nothing because you've done all these ultras. I'm like, don't say that, because a half marathon is hard. It is hard. What I do is hard. It's never easy. Like 2 miles for me is, if I go out and run right now 2 miles, that's hard. It doesn't get easy. But like you said, Anthony, there's a part of me that loves that pain, and I seek it. It's weird, but once you get into that mindset part where you don't want to quit, it becomes addicting, and you want to keep going. Like, I'm currently right now looking for the next ultra race, still training for the next Ironman race. So yeah, you seek it. It's like a dopamine.
I was just gonna say, it's definitely like a dopamine hit or something that you feel like, even if like your feet are bleeding, your shins are like all like busted, and like you get home. I'll never forget, after that half marathon, I got into the car, and I was like, regardless of time, regardless of feeling, I was like, I did it. Like, I set out a goal and you accomplished it.
And how did that pain feel?
Exactly. The pain was minor compared to the joy that I felt after that. And I feel like that is what so few people might acknowledge and might feel. And I mean, again, not to put anyone or anything that people are doing down or making it minute, because it's still hard, it's still difficult, and there's levels to it. But even if it's just going outside and walking for 30 minutes, like you set a goal and you did it and you accomplished it, right? Like, sometimes I've actually caught myself, and I've talked about this with Anthony and even got on my fiance, and it's like, I felt like I only worked for like 6 hours today, but I felt like I was more productive in the 6 hours because I set a goal than in the 12 hours that I worked yesterday, because I might have just like had like a to-do list out there somewhere, and I was just like kind of like running through the tabs on my computer. But when I set a goal, I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and I hit those goals, I already completed 3 of the tasks, 3 of the hardest things I needed to do in few hours, right? So I feel like it's about setting the goal and following up and taking action towards that goal. So
exactly, man. And it's doing what you, and that's where discipline is built. It's doing what you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And by doing that not just only helps you in getting to your physical or mental goals, but in everywhere and every aspect of your life. If you do something hard and you're checking off what you're doing, everything else becomes so much easier. Sending that email out, following up with that customer, following up with that, whatever it is, it just becomes so easy because you have trained yourself to do things that are hard. Saying no is just not a question. It's not in the books.
Yeah. I don't want to move on before I like, you kind of said it like very casually, but you said that you had completed 2 Ironmans, 2 ultras, 2 triathlons, and a few 5Ks or 100Ks, whatever, in a span of a year.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, ambitious doesn't even meet the meaning of the word, but it's like a lot of professional athletes do maybe 1 or 2 of those within a year, right? Or people, and those are people that might have been training for like 10 plus years prior. The fact that you just picked this up and you're like, oh, all right, yeah, this sounds cool, like I'm gonna do this, but like the determination, and again, we spoke about it, like we've DM'd about it and texted about it, it's like, dude, like there's so many levels to this, and there's so many steps that people need to take that they don't even know. But talk about like the proximity and like the frequency, like that, because again, like I just feel like it's insane to think that you did so much in so little time with so little training and experience, if you will, that you're like, it's all mental at that point. Like that proves the fact that it's all mental and that anybody can do it with a strong enough willpower.
I love that you said that, because that was the 2 things that I really wanted to prove to myself doing all this was, one, it's mainly mental. It's all mental. And the other part was, I can do something from nothing, right? Like I can I don't have to take so long to train for. Like I can go from, anybody can do it, right? Yeah, anybody can do it, and I wanted to prove that. And you're right, man. I trained so much that I became obsessed with what I wanted to do. It became, apart from work and life and my personal relationship, it was all I thought about. It was all I trained about. And I became obsessed with it. But a lot of people think that I was training like 4 hours a day every single day. No, it was just consistency, right? I was training maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours, Monday through Friday. And then on the Saturday or Sunday, when I had a little bit more time there, I would do my long runs or bikes for 3 or 4 hours. But yeah, man, I became obsessed with it, and it was all mental. It was all mental, because I can tell you right now, anybody can do an Ironman. It's just the mental part that stops them.
Right.
And that's what I loved about it. And that's why I kept wanting to race, and I kept signing up for the next ultra, for the next Ironman, for the next whatever it was, because I wanted to keep challenging myself. I wanted to find that breaking point of mine.
Man.
And I did find that breaking point of mine on that ultra where I had to quit on mile 56. And finding that breaking point of mine completely destroyed me. And that's why 3 weeks later I signed up again for another ultra on that 100K. And redemption, right? Because I just didn't want to quit. I knew I had found my breaking point, and now my breaking point has now been completely changed, because now it's just a different level. So I feel like I'm constantly chasing my breaking point, and I found it once, and now I haven't been able to find it again, and I'm continually trying to get there.
That's oh man, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know how you, I love how you just shared that you found your breaking point, and then 3 weeks later you're back at it. You know how many, it's like you're part of your journey, Gabe, is like up and down and up and down. And there's been so many opportunities from what I'm hearing for you to just throw in the towel and just call it a day, right? That breaking point. And it is okay, whatever. I tried it. It was good while it lasted. Let's move on to something else. But you're back at it, and you're back at it. Now you're searching your next breaking point. And then when you find that, you're going to sign up for something crazy 2 weeks later. I don't even know what that would look like, but you're going to do it, 'cause you know you're going to do it. That's awesome, man. If young people throughout the world just had 0.00% or 0.07% of you, of Gabe mindset, the whole world would be so different, man.
Oh,
so
thanks, man.
and that's why, Gabriel and I, my co-hosts, we're always talking about you and how you're just such a great example for really our listeners who are young professionals, maybe graduated from high school recently or college, that want to get out there and they're hungry, but they don't know what to do with that hunger. You're a perfect example of how you applied that hunger to something that you enjoy and that you also hate at the same time, which is really unique. And to kind of bring it home, tie this episode up here, your girlfriend would be really mad if you don't mention her. So I'm going to give you a lifeline here and help you out. But seriously though, talk about the support group, because although you are what it seems like to many people, like the one-man show, the guy actually doing the races, you're going to be the first one to tell me that you have a lot of people behind you who are really a big part of your success so far. I see your races, and I told you when I called you, I don't know if it's nighttime, like really late or really early, but your girlfriend's there, so kudos to her. I don't know which one she chose to be at or both, but you have so many people, your friends, your family are always there for you, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And I don't know if you could do it without them. So I mean, kind of talk to us about that. How important has the support group been for you?
Yeah, they have been, honestly, to the point where I don't think I could have done it without them, without their support. My girlfriend, 100% beside me. She's helped me stay disciplined in the mornings, in the workouts, and my food. Even to my races, she's been there at every single race of mine in the morning, all day, taking her pictures, making signs for me, telling me to keep going, don't quit. She was by my side. My family as well, my family members, my dad, my mom, my sister, my brother, they were all by my side cheering me on. For my last Ironman, my brother, his girlfriend, and my girlfriend flew from Miami to Texas for my race. So it meant a lot for me, for them to be there and support. And one thing I also, wanted to touch on was, I know you said that a lot of us in our age need some motivation to keep going and achieve things that they want to but are scared to. And the one thing that really helped me achieve what I have achieved in the past year was I was not afraid to fail. I was never afraid to fail. I you know, when it came to the ultra, I never ran as much as that, but I knew I wasn't afraid to fail. Even the triathlon, my first one, and I've never done a triathlon before, and I was never afraid to fail. So I think that's a huge, huge part of me as a person, and what I've learned is just not don't be afraid to fail. And even if you do fail, you know, now you know where to start, where your, like I said, where your breaking point is. Now you can start from there. Now, you know, you reached it, and now you can keep going.
I think that's so important, Gabe, and I'm really happy you mentioned it, because I mean, Anthony and I, we're all about it, right? Obviously, like, I think part of the reason why so many people might avoid or not even think about signing up for a marathon or starting a business or getting a relationship or getting married, whatever it is, I think it's almost a fear of failing in whatever subject matter that is, whether it's not finishing a race, whether it's your marriage ending in divorce, whether it's your business going bankrupt, whatever it is. I feel like that's the reason, you know, I might be wrong, but that's just the feedback, and what you're talking about, I think, is so true.
Yeah.
And it's the main reason why people might avoid whatever that is altogether, because they're like, I might be able to do it, but I might fail. Like, I'm just going to stay away from it. You know, like, oh, like, you know, I've broken up with a few people a few times. Like, I'm okay. I'm going to stay single for a bit, like, type of thing, where it's like, you're never going to get better that way. You're never going to progress and overcome or achieve whatever hump that is, because of that failure that's standing in the way. And like Anthony and I, we printed it on t-shirts, like, fail forward, right? Like, the whole, you know, thing about this podcast and the attitude that you've adopted and what we preach all the time, especially to young people. I mean, you know, even older folks, like, they can always adopt this too, but specifically to young people, because older people are always telling us, like, oh man, I wish I would have started that, and like, I wish I would have just failed 100 times and I would have learned so much, right? And it's like, we have the opportunity, right? We're in our 20s, 30s, like, we have the opportunity to jump at that and to fail at that. You know, even in my business, every single day, I'm like, where can I look for things where I can try and fail and just like get better at it? And I'm sure that's the same thing for you. Like, you're setting PRs and you're trying to look for your next breaking point. Like, you're actively looking for your failure is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I feel like that's so important for people to really adapt and take into their to their own lives, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, even financial, like, whatever it is. Like, try to adopt that mindset, because I think that's so important.
You couldn't have even said it better, man. That's exactly it. It's finding that breaking point.
Yeah.
And once you do, you can only go up from there.
Exactly. Oh man, Gabe, thank you so much, brother. Before we go, this one's for free. Let our listeners know. I'm curious as well.
Yeah.
Really quick, what is a day in the life of Gabriel Cardona consist of? Eating, training, work, waking up, go. Like, just like, what does it look like?
All right.
Real quick.
All right. So if we're talking about pure Ironman prep, it is 7 a.m. From 7 to 8, I am cycling for an hour. I work from 8 to 5:30 p.m. Then from 6 to 8, from 6 to 7, I'll do a full body workout on strength training. And then from 7 to 8, I'll run for an hour. And so I essentially do that Monday through Friday. On Saturdays and Sundays, it will be a long run, either a 3-hour, 4-hour run or a 3-hour, 4-hour bike. And then when it comes to food, I've done a couple of different diets. I've done keto, and I've done high carb, and I've done low carb. When it comes to ultra running, I've noticed that keto diet works the best for me, because when you're on such an endurance, your body starts using fat more as an energy. So when you have a keto diet, you're obviously putting more fat in your body. You've already accustomed your body to burning fat for energy. For the Ironman preps, I've noticed that a high carb is a lot better, because yes, it's still doing an endurance type of training where it'll still use your fat as energy, but I'm pushing out a lot more power through cycling and running. So the carbohydrates helps me with that energy and with that glycogen level. So I swear by eggs every morning. I have the same meals. I have eggs, hash browns, bread in the morning. For lunch, it'll either be chicken, ground turkey, and then for dinner, the same thing. Great chicken, ground turkey, and a small cup of rice. Keeping it simple. And that's what I would always, what I would also say to a lot of people is when it comes to your diet, keep it simple. Have this, I know it sounds not too good, but have the same thing every day, right? See food as fuel, something that will fuel your life, how you're going to feel, how your fitness, and it'll definitely change your life having that view of food like that.
Gabe, you heard that there's no Shake Shack burgers in that.
Yeah, there's
right?
there's
no BurgerFi. All right,
this guy's been on me for the longest time because I get a shake at Shake Shack, but you're like taking in 3 burgers at BurgerFi and calling me fat.
That sounds so good. You can have it after. You can have it after the race.
After.
Yeah,
man, dude, you know what's kind of crazy, and just to wrap things up here, you know, a little bit scary in a good way is where all 3 of us and our listeners are going to be in 2 years from now. That's crazy. Like that's what I'm excited to know about, right? 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, because all of us, our listeners, our supporters, us 3 on the call right now on the podcast, you know, we're all going to change so much exponentially in these next 2 years. So we're excited. Gabe, you're the man. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for sharing your journey. And speaking of sharing your journey, where can our listeners keep up with what you got going on and maybe contact you if they have a question or just they just want to see cool TikToks that you post?
Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Instagram at Gabriel Cardona Official. If you have any questions about running your first Ironman, your first 5K, 10K, half, full, ultra, anything like that, just shoot me a DM. I'm more than happy to help you guys on achieve your dreams, even on the mental aspect of it as well. I love this. I love to do this. I've been through it all. If you think I haven't, I have. I've thought about it all. I've tried it all. I've injured myself. So I want to save that hassle for you guys and make sure you guys reach your goal. So that's the best way to reach me.
There we have it. Thanks so much, brother. Gabe. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, appreciate you guys.